Welcome to another edition of the Gray Area presented by the Ask Isaiah YouTube page. I'm Isaiah Rose, and this season we are able to start at the beginning of the season last year when I got everything going, specifically with my YouTube page. It was in the middle of the season, which I'm glad we were able to start at the beginning of this season because this season is very, very special. It is the Diamond season. This is the 75th anniversary of the start of the NBA, which started in 1946, 1947. This is 2021 going into 2022. So the 75th anniversary, they're adding 25 new players to the NBA top 50 list to commemorate this season, and it's very, very special. Now, there's some confusion going around the world. You know, when they think about the list, you're thinking about top 50, top 75 all time. And the thing about it is that they're not going to rearrange the top 75 and put new players in and take old players out. The top 50 that is there or that was there and announced in 1997 is still there, and they're going to add, or they did add, 25 players. Now, there's a bit of a caveat here is that there were two players that were tied with the same amount of votes. So, with that said, instead of 75, there is 76 players added to this all-time team to commemorate the 75th season. So there's a little bit of a caveat there, but also there are some players left off the list that, in my opinion, is quite egregious. But before we get into all of that, let's get into who was added. Now, when you think about the NBA top 50 and who set the tone going forward and really transcended the game, obviously you have the likes of Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, and so many other greats, Will Chamberlain, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Oscar Robertson, Moses Malone, so many names that we can speak about all day. They are there. This new added 25, well, 26. Many of these players are still playing. You have LeBron James, you have Russell Westbrook, you have Carmelo Anthony, you have Giannis Antetokounmpo, who's only 26 years old. He's turning 27. You got Anthony Davis. You have so many players. So let me get into who was added. There was some retroactive additions, meaning that they could have been eligible in 1997, but they were not on that list. But they're on this list. Those two players are Reggie Miller and Dominique Wilkins. Now, back in 1997, there was some controversy in regards to Shaquille O'Neal, who at the time was in year 5 when this list was announced, and him being so young and not really establishing himself. Obviously, he was a big superstar and a great player at that time, but considering the list he was on and amongst the players that he was with, there was a big controversy that there were some players left off, including Dominique Wilkins, who was an 8-time All NBA player. He averaged over 27 points for an 8-year period from 1986 to 1994. I mean, you think about a player like that and the impact that he had in terms of being a primetime high flying player, a player that really established the league in terms of branding with the All-Star game and slam dunk contest. For him not to be on the list at that time in 1997 was very controversial. He's on the NBA top 75, and Reggie Miller is added on the list. Now, we'll get to Reggie Miller in a bit. When you think about Reggie Miller, he's one of the greatest three-point shooters to ever live. He's the all-time three-point shooter in terms of shots made, three-point shots made. He made a name for himself with the Indiana Pacers, especially in the 90s, going to the Eastern Conference Finals 6 times, going to the finals. In 2000, they lost to the Lakers, Phil Jackson, Kobe Bryant, Shaquille O'Neal. That was Reggie Miller's only finals appearance, but his indelible imprint was laid in Indiana, and as a face of that franchise, he's very, very memorable, especially with his experiences in the playoffs being one of the most recognized as one of the most clutch shooters in the history of the game. He's on this list, and much respect to him, but we will get to him and where I think he belongs going forward. But again, we're going to speak about the players that have been added to this NBA 75th anniversary team. Ray Allen, all-time great player, one of the greatest shooters ever. He's a two-time champion, 10-time All-Star, all-around player. You could go back to Ray with Milwaukee and Seattle and knew what type of player he was off the dribble. He was able to move off screens, make tough shots. As a champion, he played with the Boston Celtics and Miami Heat, came up with some of the biggest performances you could think of, clutch shots. He was always ready. His most memorable shot is actually a shot that saved the Miami Heat season in 2013, going against the San Antonio Spurs. The Heat were down by 18 in that game. Their season is on the brink. LeBron James took over, brought them back. But with the game on the line, down 3, LeBron James missed a three-point shot that would have tied the game. Chris Bosh got the rebound. Ray Allen, with his basketball IQ being at the highest level, was able to backpedal to the three-point line. And as Chris Bosh got the rebound, already knew where he was going, to that right corner where Ray Allen hit the three, saved the Heat season. They went on to win Game 6 in overtime, solidify that game, tie the series, and finish the series out in Game 7. That shot right there saved that season, as I said, propelled the Heat to win a championship, and really solidified Ray Allen as one of the most clutch shooters in the history of the game. Now, he actually holds the record for all-time threes, and Steph Curry will pass him eventually in the next 30 games or so. But Ray passed Reggie Miller. Reggie Miller had the record when he retired in 2005. So Ray passing him, solidifying himself as a three-point king. No problems there. Giannis Antetokounmpo coming off one of the greatest finals performances we've ever seen. Again, he's only 26 years old, turning 27. He's already accomplished two league MVPs, a Defensive Player of the Year, a champion, a Finals MVP. There's nothing much you can say about him. He's literally won every individual award you could think of in his career. Is only going to continue to get even greater. At 26, he's put himself in position to be amongst the greats like Hakeem Olajuwon, Shaquille O'Neal, Michael Jordan in terms of finals performances and the type of accolades that he's been able to garner so far. You got Carmelo Anthony, one of the greatest scorers this league has ever seen. His longevity is second to none. He and LeBron James come from that 2003 lauded NBA draft class, year 19. Obviously, the role has changed for Carmelo Anthony, but to be able to sustain a career this late and still be a valuable asset. Right now, he's coming off the bench, but you still trust him to knock down key shots. You know he's not scared. The best of Carmelo Anthony comes early in his career with the Denver Nuggets and New York Knicks. The prime of Carmelo's career is 2005 to 2014, in which he has 7 seasons of over 25 points per game. He has a scoring title. He holds the record for most points scored at Madison Square Garden, 62 points, which was against the Charlotte Bobcats in 2014. Again, a scorer extraordinaire, second to none, and for him, especially as an influential player in terms of how he's able to score the areas in which he has scored, especially out of that triple threat. Many people look to him as a mentor, and in terms of how he's carried himself in the league, he garners so much respect. So him being on this list, I have no issues with it. Also, in terms of recent players, rest in peace to the late great Kobe Bryant. His placement on this list is no question. He's a top 10 player of all time. In my opinion, he's in that seven to 9 range. a 5-time champion, 2-time Finals MVP, a league MVP, 2 scoring titles, scored 81 points in a game. He had a stretch of 10 straight 50-point games. You have a player of his caliber, not 10 straight 50s, but not 9 straight 40s, excuse me, in 2003. That was that was amazing. In 2007, 2006, 2007, he had in that season 10 50-point games. Um, you look at a player who redefined his career in so many different stretches. You know, he's coming out of high school in 1996. Many people question, could a player come from high school and be a presence in the league, let alone be a dominant player? He had to create who he was going to be and really mold himself. Now, many people uh, compared him to Michael Jordan. He's the closest thing to Michael Jordan we've ever seen in terms of playing style. But he had to get away from that and redefine his image in terms of the Black Mamba and really hone his hone his craft and skill in a way that will uh, that would endear him to fans for years to come. His work ethic and what he's established as one of the best scorers, one of the most well-rounded players in terms of skill and commitment that we've ever seen. Let alone his legacy and what he's done outside of basketball, giving back to women's basketball, being an Emmy Award winner, being an exceptional author who's written children's books, who has told stories through the game of basketball that will impact life beyond just athletics. I mean, Kobe Bryant, all those things being considered, when you look at what he's done in his basketball career, him being on this list is no question. Um, Another current player, Stephen Curry. Stephen Curry, as I mentioned, will eventually break Ray Allen's all-time three-point record this season. He's a 3-time champion. He's a 2-time league MVP. He revolutionized the game in terms of how the game is played, especially from the three-point line. His ability to knock down the three-point shot at the rate that he does. There's been a lot of three-point shooters. There's been a lot of great three-point shooters. There's been a lot of specialists. There's been a lot of players that garner respect when it comes to the three-point line, but none have been able to shoot the three at the prolific clip of the level that Stephen Curry does. Stephen Curry is a 2-time scoring champion. Stephen Curry is a player that not only has been able to shoot at a high level, but he's easy to play with, which has allowed the Golden State Warriors, especially from 2015 to 2019, have a dynasty that can only be marveled at. It can barely be duplicated, and if it is, it will come years and years after. For him to be able to do what he's done next to Klay Thompson, next to Kevin Durant, and still be able to beat Steph Curry shows you how great of a player he is, and the fact that kids now go into games trying to take 30 footers to try to beat Steph Curry. And listen, it's not easy to do the work that Steph Curry has done in terms of becoming the player that he has. He came into the league dealing with a myriad of ankle injuries. The Golden State Warriors were struggling to have found an identity. They have been in the doldrums for many years, and finally, once Mark Jackson came in and really investing in Steph, put him in position to shine, you saw the true potential that many saw when he was at Davidson. So for him to be on this list, no question about it. Again, a 3-time champion. He's been to 5 finals. He's went to wars with the likes of LeBron James and Kawhi Leonard. He is who he is. He deserves this spot, and he has so much more left in the game to give to the game. He'll probably be closer to the top 10 than he'll ever be near 75. But yeah, Steph Curry, you got Anthony Davis, NBA champion, 4-time All NBA, 4-time All Defense. He didn't win Rookie of the Year. That went to Damian Lillard, but He had a solid rookie season coming out of Kentucky, national champion. And when you think about what he's done, especially with his skill set, how he's been able to establish himself as one of the best bigs in the game. Now, as a Laker, he previously spent 7 years with the New Orleans New Orleans Pelicans, and unfortunately, they weren't able to win. They weren't really able to really put true contenders around Anthony Davis for a substantial period of time. Going to the Lakers, teaming up with LeBron James, and winning the championship in 2020 only solidified Davis. In my opinion, he isn't the most durable player throughout his career, but the one thing about Davis that we've seen is that when he's healthy, his talent level and what he gives to the game is second to none. I think that championship in 2020 solidified his spot on this list, but there's definitely players that were left off this list that had um, better resumes. Not to say that Anthony Davis doesn't deserve it, because he does, but I think when you think about the best bigs of his generation, there's some bigs that could have been on this list that are not. Nevertheless, though, Anthony Davis deserves to be on this list. Much respect. Um, Keep going. You got Tim Duncan, 5-time NBA champion, 2-time league MVP, 3-time Finals MVP. Um, the dynasty that the San Antonio Spurs have established was built around the likes of Tim Duncan. Now, before Tim Duncan, you had David Robinson, uh, you had the likes of George Gervin, which solidified the San Antonio Spurs as a legit franchise. When we talk about championship pedigree and what the Spurs, in terms of their identity now, represent, is built all around Tim Duncan. You had great players that were able to that were able to build their careers around Tim Duncan, be role players that support Tim Duncan, and in their own vein become Hall of Famers because of Tim Duncan's level of leadership. He, along with Greg Popovich, were a great duo that really established a foundation that took the Spurs to, like I said, 5 championships and 19 seasons with Tim Duncan at the helm. Again, the greatest power forward of all time. And the thing about Tim that many people lose that lose sight of is that they think that because he wasn't flashy or because he didn't necessarily have the most boisterous personality, he gets lost in the sauce. In my opinion, Tim Duncan is a top 7 player all time. I mentioned the longevity that he led at the helm with the San Antonio Spurs for 19 seasons. He's arguably the greatest franchise player of all time. When you consider what a franchise has to do in terms of building around a player and having the longevity that they've had, or that they did have while he was there for 19 years. You're constantly in championship contention. You win 5 championships and 6 finals appearances. You go although the Spurs never repeated, anytime you had to win a championship, especially in the West, you had to go through the Spurs. They were always in contention for a championship, and I think you have to respect that and put that in the cap of Tim Duncan. So him being there, no question about it. Then you continue on. Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant is a 2-time champion, 4-time scoring champion. When we speak about scoring extraordinaires, I spoke about Carmelo Anthony earlier. Kevin Durant is the tier Kevin Durant is in is it's probably only 3 or 4 scorers that can even remotely even talk to Kevin Durant. Um, Again, his efficiency is what sets him apart from most, considering the fact that he's a perimeter-based player. He's able to score on all levels. He's a great three-point shooter. He's an exceptional free throw shooter, and his ability to get uh, great shots from the mid-range only exacerbates how special he is, because being 7 feet and being able to create off the dribble in the fashion that he does, um, you are able to get any shot. Now, he scores so easily sometimes that you don't see the scoring binges from Kevin that you would see from a Kobe Bryant, an Allen Iverson, and LeBron James, where they're not as efficient as him in terms of shooting, but because of that, they push the boundaries, and they may go through stretches where they might not be as efficient as him, but because they're pushing that boundary so much, when they do get hot, they just go. Um, he doesn't have that in him. He scores 30 so easily, and then you're like, I didn't even realize he had 35. That's Kevin Durant. But again, he scores so easily. You can put any type of personnel around him, any type of scheme offensively, and he's gonna play at a high level. He spent the majority of his career in OKC to start. He played there for 9 years. He got drafted by Seattle. He won Rookie of the Year there, but most of his career in Oklahoma City, playing next to Russell Westbrook, establishing himself as an individual player, falling short of a championship, but going to go to State to play with Stephen Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green. They took that super team to the next level, or took that great team to super team status, really unbeatable status, and for 3 years really had the league on their head. If not for Kevin Durant getting injured in the Western Conference Finals in 2019, they probably went three straight. Fortunately, that partnership dissolved in the fashion that it did. Now he's in Brooklyn, where he's trying to win a championship next to James Harden, who he played with in Oklahoma City. But that version of James Harden is not the same. This James Harden now is a complete prolific uh, scoring juggernaut, playmaking extraordinaire. Just really, really, in terms of offense, James Harden is top tier. And he's also a member of this NBA Top 75. James Harden is a seven-time All-NBA player, seven-time All-Star. I mentioned his time at Oklahoma City. Back then, he was more of a six-man. He won Six-Man of the Year in 2012. It was a part of that group that went to the finals in 2012 with Durant and Russell Westbrook. All three of these players are on the NBA Top 75. All three of these players were drafted back to back to back. Durant in 2007, Westbrook in 2008, Harden in 2009. That trio built the Oklahoma City Thunder, the franchise that we know today. And for them to get to the finals in the fashion that they did at only 22 and 23 years old, although they did lose to Miami, they showed the promise that many people knew that they could have. Now, those three couldn't play together. Now, they created different algorithms separate from each other. You saw Harden and Westbrook team up in 2020. They weren't able to win with Houston. I mentioned Durant and Westbrook playing together for 8 years in Oklahoma City. That was after Harden had left to go to Houston. And now you see Durant and Harden together. So all three, when they broke up in 2012, weren't able to stay together, they did try in some way to win as a duo. Now we see the Brooklyn Nets trying to utilize that duo to push themselves to championship heights now. But again, Harden, a three-time scoring champion in Houston. Some of the prolific numbers we've seen from him over the last couple of years, especially between 2018 and 2019. He averaged 36.1 points in 2019, 34 points in 2020. Just amazing numbers. The only thing with Harden is he's yet to get to the finals as the premier franchise player in Houston. They fell short too many times, often falling short to the Warriors teams that took the league over from 2015 to 2019. But again, Harden, the league MVP, he's finished second in MVP voting three times, and just again, an exceptional scorer, that one of the greatest shooting guards we've ever seen. He's only missing the championship, and if he's able to win the championship with Kevin Durant, that would only cement what he's already done in his career. I mentioned Russell Westbrook. Russell Westbrook, another individual player, or a great individual player chasing that championship, that one thing that he needs. Westbrook, nine-time All-Star, nine-time All-NBA, led the league in assists three times, led the league in scoring twice, averaged a triple-double 4 times in the last 5 years. Over the last 7 years, he's averaging a triple-double as well, 26 points, 10 assists, 9.5 rebounds. Westbrook, known more for his style of play than his skill, a player that gives 110% every single time he's out on the floor. That's his greatest strength, but it's also his greatest weakness at times, because he plays so hard that he can he can put himself in position to overdo it at times, and it puts his teams in position to have to do things and win in spite of him. But I say all that to say that he has given so much to the game and has achieved so much, very much in the vein of a Harden and Durant in terms of how they've been able to ascend at a high level individually, um, to do what they have done. All three of them being MVPs. Westbrook winning in 2017, Harden winning in 2018, and Durant winning in 2014. That's three teammates or former teammates that have won that won MVPs within a 5-year span. That is just amazing. And again, they were drafted a year apart, all three of them. So to know where they are, Harden in Brooklyn with Kevin Durant, Westbrook now in LA with LeBron James, chasing that championship. If one of them or eventually both of them, if both of them are able to pull off and get a championship, it would be an amazing story considering where all three of them started. Um, to continue the list, I mentioned Westbrook and Harden. You keep the list going for the new players. You have Allen Iverson coming into the league in 1996, set the world on fire, set the league on fire in terms of having a new image. He changed the way that the game is played, especially at the guard position because of his height. At that time, you were assumed to be a point guard because of your diminutive size. Isaiah Thomas, Nate Archibald, those guys were scoring guards. But for what Allen Iverson did, especially for the amount of time that he did for a 10-year period, 1998 to 2008, to average 26 or more points each year over that 10-year span, have 4 scoring titles, to average 29 points per game in that 10 years period, uh, to put the Philadelphia 76ers on the map in the fashion that he did at the international level is second to none. Him being on this list, obviously, he fell short of a championship. He lost to the Los Angeles Lakers in 2001. That 2001 season was a magnum opus level performance for Iverson in terms of what his career would eventually be. An NBA Hall of Famer, seven-time All NBA, 11-time All Star, led the league in scoring 4 times, led the league in steals 3 times, 2-time All Star Game MVP. All those accolades aside, 2001 was everything that you can even imagine that an Allen Iverson-led team can be, and the best version of Allen Iverson that we will see. To go up against that Laker team, that was the apex of the Kobe and Shaq tandem. That 2001 Laker team obliterated every single team in the playoffs. The Portland Trailblazers, the Sacramento Kings, and the San Antonio Spurs. All three of those teams eventually played the Lakers in the Western Conference Finals during their three-peat in 2000. 2000, the Lakers played the Blazers. 2001, they played the Spurs. 2002, they played the Sacramento Kings. The 2001 Lakers beat all three of those teams in one playoff run, swept them. The 2001 76ers, led by Allen Iverson, Dikembe Mutombo, Eric Snow, Tyrone Hill, Aaron McKee, Ronnie Buford, uh, Pepe Sanchez, that whole roster, led by one man, Allen Iverson, beat that Laker team in game 1. That was the only loss that 2001 team suffered. So to see Allen Iverson be on this NBA top 75 team, no question about it. No question about it. We continue with the current players. I mentioned Reggie Miller earlier. We'll get back to him very soon. But we continue. Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi Leonard made the list. Now Kawhi is an interesting case because he deserves to be on this list. He's a 2-time Defensive Player of the Year. He's a 2-time champion, a 2-time Finals MVP. His 2019 championship with the Toronto Raptors really solidified his career. Now, that Finals MVP won in 2014 with the San Antonio Spurs defeating the Heat. He wasn't the best player on the team. He really wasn't even a top 3 player, really, but that was really his coming out party. that 2014 Spurs team was so dominant that they allowed for. I mean, they were able to really emphasize Kawhi in ways that maybe if the series was closer, they probably wouldn't. But he was able to get off and really play comfortably because the Spurs were really just obliterating the Heat. There was no question about it. They shot at a clip from an efficiency standpoint that really can't be duplicated. And I think that the Heat just had no question for the Spurs as a unit. And Kawhi was able to establish himself in that series, particularly, and win the Finals MVP. But the 2019 Finals MVP with the Toronto Raptors, he was the guy. He was the guy, the go-to guy under all circumstances, under all pressure. We go to and figure out how we're gonna win. The series clinching jumper he hit in the right corner against the against the Philadelphia 76ers still breaks my heart to this day, knowing that I'm a 76er fan to the end of time. The fashion in which that shot was made still haunts me to this day. It hit the rim 4 different times and bounced in. Kawhi was hoping that it went in. It eventually went in, but nevertheless, though, that shot in that moment really just epitomized what that Toronto team was going to do. They ended up defeating the Milwaukee Bucks in a year that Milwaukee was actually the #1 seed. That was Giannis Antetokounmpo's first league MVP to beat that Milwaukee team in the fashion that they did, losing the first two, going on to win the last four. Kawhi Leonard taking the onus on himself to defend Giannis, the league MVP, and really contribute to locking him down um, and really changing the trajectory of Giannis's career. For a time, many people really questioned if Giannis could be a champion because of how Kawhi in Toronto defended Giannis and really changed the way people looked at him going forward for a bit. But nevertheless, yeah, Kawhi deserves this. My only thing about Kawhi is that he is a top 75 player, but his durability has always been a problem. It's still an issue to this day. He's recovering from a ACL injury that will prevent him from coming back um, within the flow of the regular season. I would say it's a slight tear. It's not a full tear, which means he could return in February, but that's very hopeful. You're hopeful that he could be back by February, but in reality, he'll probably be back closer to April and May. So hopefully the Clippers, the team he's on right now, can hold down the fort enough for when he comes back, they can make a championship run. But nevertheless, though, again, he definitely deserves to be a NBA top 75 player. Damian Lillard, one of the best point guards this league has seen, out of Weber State, really flew under the radar during his college career. For Portland to draft him as early as 6 really surprised some people. But when you think about what Damian Lillard has done in this game, he is a player that you will want to build your franchise around. He's low maintenance, but he is a killer. He's somebody that will take on all challenges, and because he's not ever going to back down from it, the players around him love to be in the foxhole with him, and they play with him on the Portland Trail Blazers. Not in the biggest market. It's going to be difficult to get players over there, but to play at the level that he's played, especially over the last, what is it, 2021? So I would say over the last 6 seasons. He came in the league winning Rookie of the Year that 2012-13 season. And again, that was Anthony Davis's rookie year. Many people expected him to win it, but again, for Damian to win it and then going to have the career that he's had, well deserved to be on this list. But I bring up Damian because he's done every single thing that he possibly can to put the Blazers in a position to win a championship. It's just they fall short when you think about the super team era with LeBron James led teams, with the Warriors of the 2015 to 2019 era. Now they're battling against the Lakers with LeBron and AD. You still have to try to overcome the teams that are on the precipice of championship pedigree like the Denver Nuggets and Utah Jazz. So it always seems like the Blazers are fighting uphill, and for Damian to be in this would be year 9 right here, and to never get to the finals is very, very tough. But he's definitely a player that deserves to be on this list, and he's earned it. Um, and he still has so much more to give. He's only 31, so we're going to see some great years from Damian coming going forward. We continue to list and to think about players like um, we got Dame. Who else is recent? You got Steve Nash, two-time league MVP. We talk about revolutionizing the game, changing the game. He, along with Mike D'Antoni at the helm of the Phoenix Suns of the mid 2000s, really changed the game in utilizing the three-point line, the pace of the game in which they played, that 5 seconds or less um, type of type of shooting that they had. That 2005 season really changed the trajectory of Steve Nash's career. Now he spent early part of his career in Phoenix playing behind Jason Kidd, and he really wasn't able to really establish himself just yet. He went to Dallas, became an all-star, but he was never really looked at as a superstar level player. He was just a player that supported Dirk Nowitzki, played along with Michael Finley, and under Don Nelson, they had some really, really strong years, but he was not a superstar player. He goes to Phoenix and plays under Mike D'Antoni, and it totally changes the way people look at Steve Nash. Again, a two-time league MVP. He won back-to-back MVPs in 2005 and 2006. Took the Suns to the Western Conference Finals 3 different times. They weren't able to get to the chip, but again, just playing at that level and establishing himself as a superstar level player, he became a Hall of Fame player just off those Phoenix years alone. And I think him being on this list, you can't question it. He's one of the top 10 greatest point guards to ever live. And him really redefining his career so late in his career. By the time he went to Phoenix, he was in year 9. Again, nobody looked at him like a superstar when he got with Mike D'Antoni, but to do what he did, it's and you can only tip your cap to him and much respect to him in that regard. I mentioned Jason Kidd. J Kidd, one of the greatest point guards to ever live. He's a champion playing with the Dallas Mavericks in 2011. They actually beat, they beat LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, and in those Heatles teams that many people assume would just walk through the league. They did walk through the league and really coast to the finals, but going up against Dirk, J Kidd, Jason Terry, Sean Marion, that group was so hungry. Each of those players have been on the cusp of winning a championship in some way, shape, or form on different teams, and just wasn't able to get over that hump. But to come together and be as hungry as they were, and many people looked at them as underdogs, to be led by J Kidd at advanced age, and pull up that championship for a kid at that time. That's 2011, so he was in year 16 at that time. Much deserved. Now J Kidd in his own right, an eight-time All NBA performer, uh, one of the best playmakers that the league has seen, and especially during a time when he struggled from a shooting perspective. He never let that get in the way of him being an all-around player and really impacting the game in multiple ways. He has over 107 triple doubles. Now the triple double has become the world has become numb to the triple double because of the likes of Russell Westbrook, the all-time triple double leader. He broke Oscar Robertson's all-time record last year. But J Kidd during his era was a triple double king. He was constantly in the conversation of players that could potentially average a triple double. He always bordered on the lines of 14 points, 8 rebounds, 9 assists. He did that every single year for a number of years, and he has 6 assist titles, just all types of things. But I think when you look at what J Kidd is really respected for, it was leading the New Jersey Nets into the finals against the Los Angeles Lakers and San Antonio Spurs in back-to-back seasons in the early 2000s. Both those Nets teams lost to the Lakers and Spurs respectively, but I think when you look at what they had in terms of a unit, they were led by Jason Kidd. Byron Scott was the head coach. You had Kenyon Martin at the power forward position. You had Richard Jefferson at the small forward. Shout out to Kerry Kittles, Lucius Harris, all of those guys over there on that Nets team. But Jay Kidd was the leader. Jay Kidd was the head of the snake. Jay Kidd was the engine. Jay Kidd was the one that made those teams go. So him as an individual player, you can't question. Him as a champion, you can't question, and he deserves to be on this list. He's one of the best point guards to ever live. Um, Another recent player, Dirk Nowitzki. I mentioned Dirk during his time with Dallas. He played an entire career with Dallas. He's a 30,000 point scorer, one of the best shooters this league has ever seen. He revolutionized the game offensively, especially as a big man stretching the floor. Winning that championship in 2011, cementing his career in ways that he definitely chased, making it to the finals in 2006, winning the first two, losing the last four to Miami in the fashion that they did. It just wasn't the best feeling. And after 2006, it was looked at as if Dirk can never get back to that championship level again. The next year, after 2006, he wins league MVP, losing in the first round to Golden State in the fashion that they did as the number one seed. It just was a dark time for Dirk, and he had to rebrand himself as a championship level player. But he did it, and to see what the league has become, especially with the spacing and the utilization of the big man to create that spacing, you can trace all of that to Dirk, especially even with some of the moves that he's given the game, especially with that one leg fadeaway that he mastered and made his own signature. To see that and what he's given to the game, he definitely deserves to be on this list. And for me, when I look at what Dirk has done, he being that face of the Dallas Mavericks for so long was really the transition to the new generation, which is Luka Doncic. And Luka Doncic is all world right now. Top 7 player in the league at only 22 years old. So you can only imagine where he's going to go. But as a standard bearer for the Mavericks, that came from Dirk Nowitzki. Dirk Nowitzki was that bridge to him. And I think the fact that Dirk was able to hold it down for as long as he did, as a testament to his grind, his commitment to the game. Dirk, past Dirk, another player I mentioned, Shaq. We could talk about the likes of the point guard himself, Chris Paul. Paul, coming off of his first finals appearance with the Phoenix Suns, Chris Paul is just one of the greatest players to ever live. He's a player that you know is going to make the right decision. He's efficient. He can score on all levels, free throw shooting, 3-point shooting, at the rim when he gets his lane. Obviously, in older age, he's slowed down, and some injuries have put him in jeopardy of extending his career. But as competitive as any player has ever been in the history of this game, Chris has always been able to redefine his game on multiple teams. He started his career in New Orleans, won Rookie of the Year, actually finished second in MVP in 2008. In my opinion, although Kobe Bryant deserves an MVP, he won in 2008. Kobe, in my opinion, deserved 2006, and Chris deserved 2008. He fell short. That New Orleans team won 56 games. Kobe's team that went on to the NBA Finals in 2008 won 57. With a much better team, they added Pau Gasol midseason, and that really changed the trajectory of that season for the Lakers. Took them to the finals. They lost to Boston, but nevertheless, to see what Chris was able to do as the head of the snake of that team really turned David West into an all-star, gave Tyson Chandler a chance at an NBA career coming from Chicago. In New Orleans, he redefined his game playing next to Chris, got paid, won Defensive Player of the Year, became a champion with Dallas. All of that started with Chris Paul. And Chris Paul was only 22 at the time. After playing in New Orleans for a couple of years, he goes to the Clippers. And when he goes to the Clippers were nothing. For so many years, the history of Donald Sterling and the Clippers is well documented. We can look that up. We could talk about that at another time. But the history of the Clippers at the time Chris Paul went was nothing. They drafted Blake Griffin the year before Chris came. Chris was initially supposed to be on the Lakers. David Stern had to veto that for reasons that many people question to this day. Nevertheless, it happened. Chris goes to the Clippers and gives them an identity of Lob City, puts them in position to be championship contenders. They never get to the finals. They don't even get to the Western Conference Finals. But those teams were exciting. They were championship contenders. And to be a consistent playoff performer in the fashion that they were, you can trace that back to Chris Paul and Chris Paul only. Um, going from the Clippers to the Rockets in 2018 had the closest shot of defeating the Kevin Durant, Steph Curry Warriors of any team that I saw. And I think that Chris, as a leader, as a playmaker, as someone that is competitive and will challenge those around him, James Harden needed that to go to that next level. We saw an MVP season from him. Chris was there, but again, those injuries, which I mentioned, tend to come and really really catch up to Chris. And it did at that time. He suffered a hamstring injury and just really flushed Houston's chances of winning the championship down the drain. And because of the fashion in which they lost in 2018, it really forced that tandem of Harden and CP to deteriorate in ways that they probably didn't want. So I know Daryl Morey didn't want GM of the Rockets, but again, Chris took that experience of going to the Western Conference Finals for the first time in his career, and really has transcended to a whole other level, even in advanced age. Playing next to Devin Booker, playing next to DeAndre Ayton, playing next to Mikal Bridges, these young guys who have never had any experience in the playoffs, get Chris Paul and go to the finals. While Chris wasn't the best player on those teams, and many people can, poke holes in how effective leadership is in terms of intangibles, you trace all of that back to Chris Paul because of how great Chris Paul is. Chris Paul, again, one of the best players this league has ever seen. You're going to look to him as the quintessential point guard. He can run your offense. He can get any shot. He's really the second coming of Isaiah Thomas. Isaiah Thomas is just a two-time champion. It's nothing you do with that. But in terms of style of play and what they do for their teams, Chris is exactly like Isaiah in that regard. So for him to be on his top 75 team, no question about it, he deserves it. One thing I will say though is that these recent players that I'm mentioning, players that are active now or were recently active, you can see how competitive this era has been. The last 25 years, the talent that's come into this league, you can only imagine what is down the pipeline with the game changing in the fashion that it has, how young these players are coming in and being NBA ready. Some of the players that I mentioned prior took some time to establish what they became. These players now coming in, year one, year two, they're ready to just take the world by storm, and that's a testament to the quality of performance that we've seen. Um, Kevin Garnett. Kevin Garnett, one of the greatest power forwards of all time. He was always closely linked to Tim Duncan in a lot of ways because both were contemporaries at the same time, fighting for the same spot in the league. And often, Tim will come out on top. But in terms of individual performance and what was done in terms of skill set, Kevin Garnett was just as good as Tim, if not better in some respects, especially defensively. But for Kevin to play for Minnesota for the first 12 years of his career, never get out of the first, get out of the first round one time against. He got to the Western Conference Finals in 2004. That's actually the year that he won the championship, and that's actually the year that he won league MVP in 2004. They fell short to the Lakers in 6 games in the Western Conference Finals. And for Kevin, that was the closest he ever got to a championship. And it looked like he would never get there, especially the last couple of years in Minnesota where they were just bottom feeders. But the basketball gods saved them. You saw that link between the Boston Celtics and that camaraderie between Kevin McHale and Danny Ainge coming together and save saved Kevin Garnett in a lot of ways. He was traded from Minnesota to Boston, which, in my opinion, created the first algorithm of the super team. Now, the super teams that were created after them weren't as organic, and in a lot of ways, were manipulated and manufactured in some way. But nobody can argue that that was the first algorithm of the new era super team. Ray Allen, Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett coming together at the time that they did. Yes, they had spent some time as individuals trying to carry franchises, and they got to the point where that was the last window for them to come together and win a championship, in which they did. But that big three dominated the league, ran through the league, and they ran through the league in such a way that the league wasn't prepared for them. They didn't really have any any gauge that could really compete with them. So to see that in the fashion that they did, that's why we saw LeBron, D Wade, and Bosh come together, because they had spent years losing to the big three. LeBron had lost to the big three in 2008. Wade lost to the big three in 2010. LeBron lost to the big three of Boston in 2010. They were on the precipice of being champions, but they were constantly losing to those squads. And he said, look, let's come together in our prime. We don't got to wait till year 12, year 11 to try to be champions. Let's do it right now while we got our whole NBA lives ahead of us. And in doing so, it was controversy. But again, they're following the algorithm of the big three in Boston. That's just a fact. But again, Kevin Garnett was at the foundation of that. To win a championship in 2008 only cemented the all-around player that he was. Not only was he an MVP in 2004, he was Defensive Player of the Year in 2008. In my opinion, probably should have won Finals MVP in 2008 because I thought he was the best player in that series, but they gave it to Paul Pierce. It is what it is. But to know what Kevin has done in his game as a All-Star Game MVP, a multiple-time All-Star, multiple-time All-NBA, no question about it. Just great player, and he deserves this honor. I mentioned Reggie Miller. I mentioned where he stands, what he is. For me, especially with Reggie, Reggie is a great player. He was a great player. He's a legend. He's a Hall of Famer. Um, a player missing from this list right now is Dwight Howard. Now, Dwight, especially in the latter part of his career, he became a journeyman. He became more known for his antics than he did than he's known for him being a great player, especially in the first 8 years of his career in Orlando. Dwight Howard is a three-time Defensive Player of the Year. Dwight Howard is an eight-time All-NBA performer. Dwight Howard has made multiple All-Defensive teams. I mentioned the Defensive Player of the Year. You're Defensive Player of the Year. You're basically the defensive MVP of this league. Dwight Howard is an NBA champion. Dwight Howard is an eight-time All-Star. Dwight Howard is a slam dunk champion. Dwight Howard was the best big man of the league for a substantial period of time. Now, at the time, the era for bigs was weak, so it was easy for him to be the best when there weren't a lot of bigs. But nevertheless, though, how could Dwight Howard not be on this list? Dwight Howard? Dwight Howard? Nah, I can't see it. I mean, and to me, as great as Reggie Miller was, I spoke about his prowess as a shooter. I spoke about his imprint on Indiana basketball. He's a five-time All-Star. He's a five-time All NBA performer in 19 seasons. Um, 18 seasons. He was never a prolific scorer. He could get hot, but his game was more predicated on shooting. He went a lot of years only averaging 18 points, 19 points, 20 points. The White is giving you 22 points, 14 rebounds, 3 blocks a game for close to a decade. He led a team to the finals, just like Reggie. He won a championship with the Lakers. Obviously, the roles changed. He wasn't the best player on that team. He was more of a contributor coming off the bench, but he got the championship. Um, in my opinion, I don't know how the White is a champ. The White is left off this list, but Anthony Davis is on this list. Again, Davis deserves to be on this list, but he shouldn't be the first big from this generation to be on this list because the White, accolades wise, has achieved more than him. I don't know how Dwight Howard is not on this list. Um, Paul Pierce is on this list. I don't know if Paul Pierce is a top 75 player. Now, they said that 2 players had the same amount of votes. That's why we have 76 instead of 75. I don't know who those 2 players were. But if I was to put my finger on who was the top, it would be Reggie Miller and Paul Pierce. Recency bias plays a part in a lot of things because of Dwight Howard's history over the last couple of years. You especially going from multiple teams in the fashion with which he did. He started in Orlando, played there for 8 years. It deteriorated very, very fast and ugly with his relationship with Stan Van Gundy and how he exited Orlando. He went to Houston. Then he went from Houston. He was in Washington. He was in Atlanta. He was in Charlotte. It just got real bad for a period of time. But he's been able to redefine his career as a role player on championship contending teams and championship teams. So to see him not be on this list is like, what are you doing? That's just not a plausible thing. Um, for 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 new players to be on this list, um, and current players, active players, for them to miss the White in the fashion that they did, I just don't agree with that. If I was to make it now, another thing too, when you think I mentioned this earlier, the top 75 is not a new 75. It's not a new 75. So you can't take players off. I see a lot of people on the internet bringing up Tracy McGrady, bringing up Vince Carter, bringing up Kyrie Irving, and it's not about the most talented players. You have to achieve, and for the likes of Tracy McGrady, one of the best players of his era, yes, never got out the first round. He doesn't have an MVP. Um, he's a 7-time All-NBA. He had a significant prime from 2001 to 2008, but it was hampered by injuries. You know, their ability played a part in his deterioration of his career in some respects. He did play 15 years, so you got to respect that. But you can't really put somebody in the top 75 just because they're talented. They have to like win at a high level in some respects. So T Mac being left off, people bringing up Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving is one of the most talented guards you're ever gonna see play basketball. That is without question. Handle wise, finishing at the rim, being able to shoot on all levels, shooting threes, mid range, free throws, all of that. He can do it. But you gotta perform. You gotta play. Kyrie has made 3 All NBA teams in 10 years. He is very, very popular. So he's a 6-time All Star. But durability has always been a problem for Kyrie Irving, even at Duke University. So him being in and out the lineup plays a part in why he didn't really or hasn't really maximized to the level of his talent. Now he hit one of the biggest shots in the history of the game. In my opinion, the top 3 shot in the history of the game. the shot that knocked off the 73-9 Warriors in Game 7. He did that. Shout out to LeBron James. We'll get to LeBron in a second. LeBron carried that team. He's the face of that team. But Kyrie Irving was there. Champion. Kyrie Irving hit the shot. He did it. But again, durability plays a huge part. Recency bias plays a huge part. Some of the things that Kyrie Irving has been associated with in terms of team culture and how his leadership has been questioned in some respects. Right now, his choice to not play due to the COVID vaccine or not getting the COVID vaccine has been very, very divisive in some respects. In my opinion, respect I respect his decision. Whatever you got to do what's best for you. But if you want to play, you got to get the vaccine. And if you choose not to get the vaccine, you have to you got to live with those consequences in that. And for right now, especially in the city that he plays in, which is New York City, you can't play. And it's unfortunate because we're missing out on one of the best talents in the game. But due to the climate that we're in, especially with COVID, these are the parameters that come with it. So unfortunately, he's not playing this season for right now. But again, his talent is second to none. Yes, but is he a top 75 player? No. People are talking about Vince Carter. Vince played a very, 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 very long time. He's the greatest dunker we've ever seen. That's a fact, right? He made 2 All-NBA teams in 20 years. He played 2 All-NBA teams in 20 years. He made 8 All-Star games, which is cool. But I think in terms of being a great player, he didn't or was not a great player for a long enough period of time to overcome the players that made it. You know what I mean? Now you respect his durability. He's gonna be a Hall of Famer. That's no question. And again, his accolades as the greatest dunker ever cannot be questioned. Slam dunk champion in 2000 is a classic. The way that he reinvented his game as a shooter that extended his longevity cannot be questioned either. But when you talk about top 75, though, he's not a player that I would put on this list. Now I save LeBron as the best for last because to see what LeBron James has done in this game over the last, he's been in the NBA for this is year 19, but I would say over the last 20 years, going back to his senior year in at St. Vincent St. Mary in Ohio, in the spotlight, the expectations that he had to come in the game and to follow Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan is the greatest player of all time. He is the standard by which all NBA players are held. Shout out to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, arguably the greatest basketball player of all time, but not, in my opinion, not the greatest NBA player of all time. It's very hard to play in that shadow, and many players who have tried to follow in that shadow have fallen short to live up to that standard, whether it be realistic or unrealistic, whether it be fair or unfair. To see what LeBron has done in his own right, it's different from Michael Jordan. It's not the same. They don't play the same. They're not going to win the same. Nevertheless, to see what he has done as a 4-time champion, a 4-time league MVP, a 4-time finals MVP, to win championships across 3 different franchises, to go to the finals from 2011 to 2018. That's an 8-season stretch across 2 teams, and to go to the finals 10 times in his career. Across, or at the time, 17 seasons. He won his last championship in year 17. To have all of these teams in position to win a championship year in and year out, and to be at the core of all of that as the best player on all of those teams, you cannot question what LeBron James has done. You cannot question the tier of player that he is. You're gonna poke holes in every single player, especially in this internet age where you have Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, and all these different social media outlets that constantly create the alternative with the contrarian side of things. You're gonna poke holes in everything. Nothing is gonna be perfect. But to see what LeBron James has done over the last 19 years, him being on this list, you can never question it. I have LeBron in my top five. Right now, I have him at three. If he would have won five, specifically this season, I'll probably move him up to two. At the end of his career, I probably will move him to two, second all time behind Michael Jordan. But in my opinion, just because he's second doesn't mean he's second to anyone. If you believe that he's the greatest player of all time, that's your opinion. I think that he's been great enough for long enough that you can you can be strong in your conviction to believe that he's that special as the greatest player of all time. Um, he has done every single thing that has been asked of him and exceeded all expectations, and the expectations were out of this world coming into the league. He saved the Cleveland Cavaliers from the depths of hell. He revitalized the economy in Cleveland twice. He left and came back and built it back up, brought a chip to Cleveland for the first time in 64 years. Cleveland, not just Cleveland basketball, but the sport, the city itself. Going back to the Cleveland Browns and Jim Brown, um, the great Jim Brown. Um, so for me, looking at LeBron to win with the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Miami Heat, and um, in the Los Angeles Lakers, he changed the way that team building is being done right now. Many people don't like it. They don't like the fashion with which these super teams are being put together. But if I'm honest about it, it's being built in a different way. It's being built by the players as opposed to the GMs and coaches, like back in the day. But super teams have been around. When you can go back to the Los Angeles Lakers of the '80s, the Boston Celtics of the '80s, those two teams dominated the league. Right? You have five Hall of Famers on those teams at one time. On both of those teams at one time. Um, you had teams with Dr. J, Charles Barkley, Moses Malone on the same team. Now, Barkley at that time wasn't the Barkley that he became, but he was still a great player, right? Um, you can look to the Boston Celtics of the '60s. Um, those guys had multiple Hall of Famers on that team, and they won 11 chips in 13 years, being led by Bill Russell. They won eight straight chips at a time. You know what I mean? So to see that, obviously now this era being led by LeBron is the era of player empowerment. They're taking more control of their destiny. Um, and in times it's very sloppy. They can manipulate situations and force their way out, and it's unfortunate. But that's the downside of something. But what about the upside? The upside is you're seeing players take control of their destiny. They're not waiting 12 to 13 years to be on the back end of a career and then hope that they can get a championship opportunity. They're taking their destiny in their own hands and trying to find ways to win, because at the end of the day, we're judged by winning. There's a lot of great players on this list that have never won, and they wish they've won. They wish they had an opportunity to put themselves in position to be next to other All Stars and MVP candidates to have a chance to go up against the best. But they wasted 15 years in the spot, 8 years in the spot, 9 years in the spot. And by the time they had a chance to get out, their prime was gone, their skills eroded, there was nothing left. So for LeBron at the core of it to push the needle and change the game. Um, and from a business perspective, we've seen what he's done. He's on his way to $1 billion. Following the mold of the Magic Johnsons, the Michael Jordans, the Shaqs, the entities that we've seen created off the foundation of the NBA, second to none. But again, LeBron, amazing. Um, for me to look at this list now, I've been following the NBA as an avid fan, analyst, broadcaster for the last 21 years of my life. Pardon me, 22 years of my life. I'm 31 now. And I've seen most of these players in the last 25 years. I've seen most of them. I've seen their careers. And to see that most of these players are still active, again, only shows you the pedigree of the league that we're in right now. And I am I'm proud of the NBA, and I hope that they can continue to be at the forefront of pushing sports forward, pushing marketing forward, pushing fan involvement forward. All of the positive things that the NBA brings to the table for the world. Um, I'm proud of it, and for to be 75, to see where the game is going from 1997 to now, you have to pay homage to the late great David Stern, who really at the core was at the forefront of the league, going global and international. And Commissioner Adam Silver has only taken that to the next level. Being up under David for some time, I'm sure they had conversations in preparation for the moment that David stepped down and to follow the mold and take it to even greater heights. So where they are, what been able to overcome in terms of different controversies and different things like that, still be here today at the top tier core that they have. I as a fan am very, very proud. Again, these lists come out, it's always going to be controversial. There's always going to be players left off, players that feel that they should be on. Me personally, I don't have a problem with 95%, 96% of the guys that were added. Again, I've seen most of these guys that have been added. If not, I've seen if not all of them. But Dwight Howard should be on the list. That's where I'm gonna leave it. Dwight Howard should definitely be on the list. That's an egregious snub. Um, I'll be back on with some contemporaries of mine. We'll discuss it, break it down. But again, I'm good with the 25, except for Dwight. All of the players have been added. Congratulations. And for the next 25, we look forward to seeing more great players that will contribute to this game. And I will only hope that in my fandom, I will be able to continue to witness all of that greatness. Again, thank you guys for tuning in. This is an Ask Isaiah gray area presentation of the NBA 75th anniversary team. It's 76 players. Shout out to everybody that has been added. Thank you guys for watching. Peace.